All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and on behalf of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, I want to welcome all of you this evening to our Candidates Forum for the municipal election, which is coming up on Tuesday, November 6th. So, 7th, Tuesday, November 7th. So as we begin, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is TJ Jean. I'm the administrator of the Gaffney Home and the past chairman of the board of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce. And tonight we're pleased to present to you this forum which will allow you, the public, to hear from your city council and mayoral candidates. Before we begin this evening, I'd like to take a moment to thank a few individuals. I want to start with Tim Kremen of Kremen Creative for taping the forum so that it can be rebroadcast on Metrocast. We also want to thank Metrocast for broadcasting the Candidate Forum live this evening on Channel 12 and for rebroadcasting it several times prior to Election Day on November 7th. We also want to thank Foster's Daily Democrat, the Rochester Voice, and WTSN and Metrocast for providing coverage this evening of our Candidates Forum. I also want to welcome members of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce Young Professionals Group who are with us this evening. This is a great way for them to experience municipal government. And also we want to thank the City of Rochester for use of the City Council chambers this evening as well as the taping equipment out back. I also want to announce a few upcoming events for the Chamber of Commerce, starting with the annual tree lighting ceremony, which will take place on Friday, December 1st at Central Square in downtown Rochester. The event will begin at 5:30, and it will include caroling, dance performances, hot chocolate, cookies, cookie decorating, a photo booth, and a very special visit from Santa himself. The Chamber will also hold a collection of children's items to benefit the children at the Homeless Center of Stratford County. Then on Sunday, December 3rd, Rochester's Holiday Parade will begin at 3 p.m. and travel from the high school through downtown Rochester and ending at the Common. We'll be displaying floats, marching bands, and a visit from Santa once again. This is underwritten by Service Credit Union, and the theme of this year's parade is a hometown Christmas. For more information on the holiday tree lighting or the holiday parade, please contact the Chamber office at 332-5080 or visit rochesternh.org. Now, I will introduce to you those who are seeking the office of City Council. Starting with Ward 6, we have incumbent Councilor Donna Bogan. Ward 6, Seat B, incumbent Councilor James Gray. Ward 5, Seat A, I'm sorry, he's not here. Ward 4, Seat A, former Councilor and former Mayor David Walker. Ward 3, Seat A, incumbent Councilor Peter LaChapelle. Ward 3, Seat B, Thomas Abbott, who is unable to attend this evening. Ward 2, Seat A, incumbent City Councilor Elaine Lauterborn. Ward 2, Seat B, incumbent Councilor Sandra Keynes. Ward 1, Seat B, incumbent Councilor Ray Varney. And we have our contested race of the City Council, Ward 5, Seat B, incumbent Councilor Robert Gates. And Ward 5, Seat B, candidate Sam Oliver. All right, the format for this evening's debate. All of the candidates present will be given 2 minutes for opening remarks. They will be speaking in reverse order of their wards, starting with Ward 6 and ending with Ward 1. Those in uncontested races will speak first, and those in contested races will speak thereafter. Our official timekeeper this evening is Mr. Matt Bollier of Service Credit Union. He is also the chairman of the board of directors of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce. He will control the 2-minute timer, which you see up above here on the monitors. When your time is up, we ask that you please conclude your remarks immediately. If you do not, you will hear the magic bell, at which point I'll jump in and we'll end the conversation. Remarks made by candidates are for the purpose of discussing themselves and their position on city issues only. Endorsements of other candidates or attacks on others will not be tolerated. Following remarks from each of the candidates in all wards, media representatives will ask questions of the candidates in the contested races only, and they will alternate wards as they do so. The candidate for which the question is addressed will have 1 minute to respond, and the challenger of that ward will also have 1 minute to respond. Again, please be mindful of the monitor so you know how much time you have left. Now I'll introduce to you the media panel, which will be addressing our candidates this evening, starting with Mr. Kyle Stucker of Foster's Daily Democrat, Mr. Harrison Thorpe of the Rochester Voice, and Mr. Dave Andreessen of News Talk 98.1 WTSN. Also, we'll be taking questions from the audience. Index cards are provided on a table at the rear. We encourage anyone who is in attendance that wishes to ask a question, please fill out a card. Those cards will come up to me, and as time allows, we will ask those questions. And those listening at home may call in during the live portion only, which is on this evening, October 23rd. They may call 335-7557, or they can email at forum@rochesternh.net. Chamber representatives will collect the cards, and staff are manning the phones as we speak. We'd like to thank those volunteers this evening, and that is Deputy City Manager Blaine Cox and Chamber Governmental Affairs Member Lisa Stanley of Whitway Supply. And Laura Ring will collect the questions and provide them to myself. All right, at this time, we are going to start with our introduction of the uncontested races, starting with Ward 6, Seat A, Councillor Donna Bogan.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you, Chamber, for hosting this forum. My name is Donna Bogan, and I've lived in Rochester for 28 years, and I work as a paraeducator at Chamberlain Street School. I'm seeking re-election for City Council Ward 6, Seat A. I'm completing my first term on council, and during that time, I am proud to have taken part in some exciting advances in Rochester's growth. The Ridge Marketplace, the City Hall Annex, and most recently, the Credo Tech Center renovation, just to name a few. I'm very involved in creating a positive image for the city. I'm currently Secretary of the Riverwalk Committee, a member of Rochester Listens, and I frequently volunteer for Rochester Main Street and Chamber of Commerce events. In addition to helping Rochester to the forefront of places to live, work, and play, I look for ways to keep costs down while maintaining services. During this next term, my focus will include increase in workforce housing, as well as providing assistance to our veterans. I would also like to see increased shelter space and programs to help the homeless population. I would like for Rochester to work as a total community to find ways to combat the opioid crisis and also find ways to provide advanced mental health care. While I am one of 13 decision makers, our ideas and opinions are heard and changes can be made. Thank you, and please vote on November 7th.
Thank you, Councillor Bogan. Now, Ward 6, Seat B, Councillor James Gray.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome you all here today. This is a very nice turnout that we have here. I am James Gray. I am currently serving as a city councilman, Seat 6B. I am also your state senator. One of the things that I would like to talk about is community involvement. Rochester is what it is today because of the citizens and their support of the community. Anything from baseball, softball coaches to elected positions. When we look at the ballot right now in several of the wards, we see that there are some positions, some of the elected positions for selectman, clerk, or one or two of the other on there where we need your assistance. To make Rochester better, we need the citizens to come and help do things like being on the planning board, being on the zoning board, and all of those things. The people that are here at the table serve in various capacities other than just what they were elected to do. And again, so if someone out there does have the time, we can probably find a way to use your talents and to help the city. Other than that, November the 7th is Election Day. I'd like to see you at the polls. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now move to Ward 4, Seat A, former Mayor and City Councilor David Walker.
Thank you. I've had the privilege of serving on the City Council for many years that has worked well together for the best interests of the citizens of Rochester. I have been a part of the City Council that has worked in a professional way by listening to all perspectives and collaborating manner and to achieve the best results. I plan to continue this approach as City Councilor. Working in an inclusive, collaborative manner produces positive results that best supports the citizens of the city. The city has seen a great deal of economic growth for many years, and I'm proud to have been a part of it. I want to expand this growth in the Granite State Business Park and Granite Ridge by making Rochester a more business-friendly place to be. The city has seen more challenges lately in public safety. The need for more officers on patrol has increased, and I look forward to working with the Police Commission to come up with a creative way to solve that problem. The fire department has an apparatus replacement program that I hope to keep as a priority. The City Council will work with staff to bolster the department to provide the most efficient fire protection service possible. I'm very much aware that the city must work within an affordable budget for all our citizens. The tax cap keeps overspending in check, and the City Council has passed budgets under that cap every year since its inception. The City Council must deliver critical services to our residents in an efficient, cost-effective manner. As City Councilor, I will work with the City Manager, City Departments, and identify more efficient ways to perform city services. It is through a collaborative effort that this can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Now we will turn to Ward 3 CA, Councilor Pete LaChapelle.
Thank you, and good evening. I'm Pete LaChapelle, and I'm running for City Council, Ward 3 in Garnick. I'd like to thank the Chamber for hosting this event. I'm running for City Council because I want to further expand our commercial growth and development. I feel we need to continue our focus of facilitating the expansion of our commercial tax base and making the necessary investments in infrastructure repairs and public safety. Over the past few years, the Council had the vision to create 2 TIF tax increment finance districts, Granite State Business Park and Granite Ridge. Both TIF districts have created commercial growth in the city. This is a type of growth that will spread the tax rate out and reduce the burden on residents. The downtown has been the topic for many years, and rightfully so, and it should be the main point. We need to promote the assets that we have and build off them. I've said this a number of times over the years. The Opera House is a gem, which continues to attract people from both inside and outside of the city. The Council needs to support and be attentive to the needs of business owners, especially downtown. Continue our support of Rochester Main Street, both financially and through close collaboration on projects that they initiate. I was born and raised in this city, and I'm extremely proud to live here. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why I'm here again this evening, is I want to continue to give back. I don't have much time left, so I appreciate your time. Thank you for your support. And remember, Garnick in Ward 3, voting is back at Garnick School on Railroad Ave. Thank you. 2 minutes goes way too quick.
Thank you, Councilor LaChapelle. All right, we now move to Ward 2 CA, City Councilor Elaine Lauterborn.
Thank you. Good evening, Chamber members, fellow candidates, and members of the viewing public. As candidates, we are often asked, why are you running? Serving on the City Council has enriched my retirement years. I enjoy the challenge. I like to be a problem solver. I enjoy the opportunity to continually learn. And most of all, I enjoy working with my fellow councilors and the city staff. I have met many wonderful Rochester business people and residents through my time on the council, and so many people who give of themselves to better our community and the lives of the people in it. Rochester is truly a great community. Of course, there are issues and problems that crop up. The opioid crisis of recent years is an example. The City of Rochester has stepped up and partnered with others to help address this difficult issue through various avenues. Some issues are ongoing, such as the downtown, and we just have to plug away at them a little at a time. But working together, elected leaders, staff, residents, and businesses, we will continue to move forward and enrich our own lives as well as the lives of others in the process. That's what it is all about, people caring about and respecting others. I thank the voters of Ward 2 for allowing me to serve in this role in the past and hopefully now for 2 more years. And thank you to the Chamber and the media for sponsoring this forum.
Thank you, Councilor. We will now move to Ward 2, Seat B, Councillor Sandra Keynes.
Thank you very much. I'm a native of Rochester. I was a product of Spalding High School and the University of New Hampshire. I spent essentially my whole life here with a great deal of traveling in between. I've served probably close to 30 years on the city council, on and off with a couple of breaks in between. And I think that has given me the perspective that is really helpful on the council, because you see what we should have done and you see what could be done and what hasn't been done. So when you take a little break like that, it's helpful sometimes. But it's also interesting to know, as a native, I'm pretty tender-hearted about this community. And that's why I've continued to serve. And I think we can be, and I think we always were, the greatest city in the state, with a few little exceptions. So I'd like to continue to serve you folks. I'm a bit of a Luddite in that I'm not always the first one to jump on new ideas and new spectacular programs brought before the council. I think they have to be proven to me that they're going to be better. If we're going to spend more money, I think we need to show that they're better than the ones we have in place right now. So it's a little different perspective than many of the folks here. But the other thing is, we're a product of the state. All cities and towns are. And our revenues and finances are not wholly, but dramatically dependent on how the state of New Hampshire goes. And frankly, the state has been harming the cities and towns for the last 5 or 6 years. And so we've had to cut services here. But I think, given that we have a tax cap and the probably $7 or $8 million in revenue that should have come to the city that did not, I think we've done a great job of providing the kind of services and the forward-looking thoughts that have been going on, particularly the last couple of years, things like the Riverwalk that are going to be excellent for the city. So I'd appreciate serving you another couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and we move to Ward 1, Seat B, Councillor Ray Varney.
Thank you, TJ. I've been privileged to represent Rochester Ward 1 as a city councilor for the past 11 years and to serve as deputy mayor for the past 8 years. And during that period, the city council has continued to invest in our facilities, infrastructure, economic development, and schools while staying within the tax cap. Some of the projects that have been completed recently are the Salmon Falls Road Sewer and Water Project, which will bring needed city services not only to residents on Salmon Falls Road, but to the Industrial Park and the Market Basket Plaza. We've recently completed the renovations to the City Hall Annex, which saved a historic building and made very usable office space. The city has purchased additional land to expand the Granite State Business Park, which is key to expanding our industrial tax base. The city has also supported funding for the city's first addiction recovery center in concert with Frisbee Hospital. One of the most important developments, a new host community agreement with Waste Management, was negotiated recently and approved by the City Council, which resulted in a significant revenue increase to the city. During the next 2 years, the two projects that come to the top of the priority list are to construct a new Public Works Department facility, which will provide a safe and clean environment to maintain equipment and extend operational life of equipment. I also currently serve on the Joint Building Committee for the Credo Technology Center renovation, and this is a project that was made possible by $12 million state fundings, by $12 million in state funding secured mostly due to the efforts of Mayor McCarley. Other goals for the upcoming year: we need to focus on the opioid and homeless crisis in the city. I'm not sure what we can do, but we ought to look at some things. Safe Stations program that has been implemented in Manchester seems to be a pretty workable, not a solution necessarily, but an assist, and I think we should examine that. I look forward to working with the city council members in the future and keep the city moving forward in a positive direction. So please vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Varney. All right, well, that will conclude our opening remarks of the uncontested races. So those councillors are now dismissed, and we thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, TJ.
And we will transition now to our contested race in Ward 5. Once again, those councillors, or those seeking the office of City Council, are incumbent City Councilor Robert Gates and challenger Sam Oliver. So I will begin now with the incumbent, Councillor Robert Gates.
Thank you very much, and I thank the Chamber for hosting this event, and I thank all of you for being here this evening. Not being a lifelong resident of Rochester, I would like to use my opening remarks time to give you some biography on me. I was born in 1944. I graduated from high school in Danvers, Massachusetts in 1962. I graduated from Electronics Technician School in 1964. I worked in the electronics industry until '67, at which time I enlisted in the United States Navy and was honorably discharged in 1972. Upon discharge, I began working on building a small business of carpentry and general contracting. I have worked my entire career as a self-employed person. For the past 7 years, my wife and I worked as educational advocates, helping children with learning disabilities achieve the same educational opportunities as your typical child. My wife Doris and I moved to Rochester in 2003. We soon became members of the Chamber of Commerce, and I attended many governmental affairs committee meetings over the years. In 2004, I was appointed to the Zoning Board of Adjustment and continue serving on the ZBA to this day. I served several years on the Salvation Army Advisory Board. I was elected to my current City Council position in 2013, and I'm currently serving my second two-year term, serving the citizens of Ward 5. The two subcommittees that I serve on are Codes and Ordinance and Public Safety. And I hope all of you will remember to vote on November the 7th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Gates. And now we turn to challenger, Mr. Sam Oliver.
Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you to the Chamber for hosting this. I am also not a native of Rochester. I grew up in Dover, and my wife and I chose to move here 10 years ago. I've since tried to integrate myself in this town. I've volunteered for a variety of different organizations. I have two young children, one 13, one 8, and that, of course, puts me in the youth groups quite a bit. I've served as with the Scouts, as den leader, committee members. I've been with RISA, Rochester Youth Soccer Association, where I coach. Still currently, I've been the past president, and a variety of other different organizations, if you will, to kind of wrap this up. The reason I'm running is I just want to get a little more involved and give the children and young families of this city a little more voice than I think they have. I don't hear some of the things that I'm concerned with sometimes come up as maybe often as I like: schools, green spaces, et cetera. Also very concerned with the opioids crisis. As I said, I've coached. I've had the same group of kids with me since I'm 8 or 9 years old. Never mind my own children, but if I have to hear about what happened to one of them someday, that's going to really break my heart, and I just want to get ahead of that and see what, as a city, we can do to try and fix that, though that's a very complicated issue, and obviously public safety being very important to me. That's realistically why I'm sitting up here. I'm hoping to see all of you on November 7th. Please come out and vote, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. All right, we will now move to the media questioning portion of our debate this evening. Once again, media representatives will ask questions on their own selected topics to each of the candidates who are in the contested race. We will alternate the media representatives asking the questions and alternate the candidate being asked a question to allow equal time. As a reminder, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each of the questions. And we will begin with our first question from Mr. Kyle Stucker of Foster's Daily Democrat.
Good evening. So start off with everybody's favorite topic, taxes and the tax cap. So while Rochester hasn't overridden its cap, there have been many increases over the years due to a variety of factors. These increases have impacted not only funding for the city and the school district, but organizations that rely on taxpayer funding to provide their services. If elected or re-elected, how will you help the city do more to ensure its departments, agencies, and services receive the money they need, while in the process also protecting taxpayers' wallets?
We'll let Councilor Gates begin.
That's a very good question. We have a lot of what I call seasoned citizens living in this city. And my concern is the tax load on them when they pay their property taxes. I realize that some of these agencies depend on tax dollars for their work, and it certainly is honorable work. But you have to strike a balance. The balance is brought about by discussions in this chamber by these council members to make the determination as to how much taxes need to be raised according to the tax and spending cap and where that money is to be allocated. It is a joint decision or a majority decision by the council to make those determinations.
Thank you. Mr. Oliver, response?
The tax cap from where I've sat is great for a target. That said, it does not seem to have a lot of room when there are emergencies. I'm not completely sure, to be honest, where, how to quite adjust that if it needed to be. When the state falls short, when there are emergency spendings, when there's other things that pop up, there doesn't seem to be a level. Our schools in particular that I know of don't really seem to be lacking and don't have an ability to recoup that money. So looking at programs to try and get that in outside from the state and federal government, working with some of our state reps to make sure we aren't cutting those funds in the first place would probably be a great place to start. And from there, then it's realistically, it's going to be a greater conversation with everybody to try and figure out what's the best for the city.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Harrison Thorpe of the Rochester Voice, and will be addressed to candidate Sam Oliver.
Yes, Councilor Hopeful Oliver. Many people in the city of Rochester are eager to keep the small town feel associated with Rochester's past, while others think it can only move forward and prosper with more commercial space and more development that brings in dollars from the communities around us. Can you speak to both concerns and what your philosophy is in balancing the two as we move forward?
My philosophy would be to have a balance. I tend to want a middle of the road. I do think you need the small town feel. In our downtown, would be a perfect place to have that. Some of the more outlying areas where we have the Ridge, for instance, and other places like that would be a perfect opportunity. My personal view is if we're going to keep the tax burden off the taxpayers, commercial growth is the clearest and biggest way to affect that, which means you lose a little bit of that. You got to work with the historic committee, certain areas of the town, figure out what you're going to keep with that small town feel and maybe where you're going to go out. And like that Route 11, as far as I'm concerned, is a perfect place to kind of let that build up a little bit.
Thank you. Mr. Gates.
Well, first of all, I have my doubts about keeping a small town feeling. Most communities grow over the years, and that changes. You've seen Rochester change over the years. The community in Danvers, Massachusetts, where I grew up, that's changed enormously over the years since I've been back there. I think commercial development is terribly important. I think that has to take the tax burden off the residential taxpayers or lighten it, because you got a lot of older folks living in this city that are living on the edge of financial sustainability, I'll say. And so we need more taxes from the commercial entities that situate in this city. And I see the city growing, and I would like to see it stay a small town, but I don't see that realistically taking place.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Our next question will be from Dave Andreessen of WTSN, and it will be addressed to Councilor Gates.
Well, since we're talking about taxes, mine will stay on that topic right now. Councilor Gates, one of the issues that's facing a lot of municipalities, like we've also talked about tonight, is the downshifting of the retirement costs to the municipalities, the education costs, that balance that you talk about. If, as a last resort, you were faced with the council having to override a tax cap, what would your feeling be? And what would some of the things that you would be thinking about go into that decision?
First of all, I'm fundamentally opposed to overriding the tax cap. and as I've said on many occasions, the only way I would consider an override is if there were a catastrophic event in this city, then I would give that serious consideration. Frankly, I think the state's wrong to downshift these costs to the cities. We are experiencing more and more retirements, and it's going to take more and more tax dollars in the retirements, and that leaves fewer tax dollars to pay the teachers, the firefighters, law enforcement officers, DPW employees, and something's got to change there. Some state law has got to change that.
What would be an example of a catastrophic event for the
If
city
the city
budget?
hall burned down, the community center burned down. We had a terrible tornado and multiple municipal buildings and homes got ruined. That kind of catastrophic event. You got to remember one thing, when that tax cap was voted on, I have to stop.
Saved by the bell. All right, we'll now move for a response from Mr. Oliver.
It's something I would have to consider. And and more than anybody else, I don't want my taxes to go up either. But there is a downshifting. It's not a good thing. It's designed originally from a state level, to help towns just like ours who don't have a tremendous revenue come in, to ease some of that burden. So I very fundamentally disagree with the state's decision. If we can't help reverse some of the state's decisions, then we've got to come up with a way to help fund some of those programs. We can't eroding our schools, the public safety, different things like that. So would it be on the table for me? It would. Would I be happy? I would not. Would I do it easily? No, I wouldn't. But it's something I would have to seriously consider if we're going to keep moving forward somehow, some way. That said, as Councilor Gates pointed out, you do have some of the older folks that are on the edge, fixed incomes, and you've got to bring them into this consideration.
All right, thank you. Our next question will come from Harrison Thorpe, and it will be addressed to Mr. Oliver.
Yes, Mr. Oliver. Keno gambling has been proposed to help fund kindergarten. Can you explain to us your position on Keno gambling?
Yeah, I honestly don't have a lot of position on Keno gambling. It is nothing I have a lot of knowledge on. I would, if it came up and it was something that was placed before us, I'd want to talk to some experts, figure out what's going on, and see what the best way to move forward for the city. But from my point of view, this comes up every couple years around election time. We talk about Keno gambling, and nobody I know of talks about it past that point. So it's just nothing I have a lot of knowledge on.
Thank you. Councilor Gates.
Well, first of all, let me say I am fundamentally opposed to gambling. I have a fundamental opposition to it. I think there are better ways of doing things. I don't have any off the top of my head that I would suggest, but I just think deriving tax dollars or money to be used as in place of taxes or in lieu of taxes through gambling is probably not a good thing. And as I said, I have a fundamental opposition to it.
Thank you. Okay, our next question will come from Kyle Stucker, and it will be addressed to Councilor Gates.
Councilor Gates, we heard some of your other colleagues mention the opioid crisis tonight in some of their opening remarks. This is kind of a two-part question. In regard to the opioid crisis itself, do you see it as a treatment and prevention issue or more of an enforcement issue at this point? So to take that a little further, hypothetically speaking, if you're presented with an opportunity where you can only increase funding for one thing, either some form of treatment, whether we're talking about prevention, inpatient services, et cetera, or enforcement, such as providing it to the police department to step up what they're doing in the community, what would you do and why?
You got to remember one thing about this opioid epidemic. I don't think any of you either forced someone to start taking these drugs or gave it to them forcefully. It's unfortunate, and I feel a lot of compassion for folks that are hooked on these drugs. We do have programs in place in this city to help drug addicts. However, the drug addict has to want to embark on the road to recovery. it's like the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make him drink. And if people that are involved in drugs are not willing and 100%, 110% willing to embark on a road to recovery, there's not a whole heck of a lot the city can do. Enforcement is part of the issue, and treatment is another part of the issue. And I don't think you can separate the two. They have to work hand in hand with one another, and I think our law enforcement agency does a good job at helping some of these addicts when they come in contact with them to at least offer them that road to recovery.
Thank you, Councilor Gates. Mr. Oliver.
Treatment and prevention. That's based on my conversations I've had with medical professionals, people would deal with that, that at this point, that obviously not talking to our youth, not having the problem in the first place is the best way to go about it, and then it is prevention. We've gone the law enforcement, obviously just say no to drugs back in the 80s on up. It's only worked so well. And the current mentality and thought process from the people that deal with this on a day-to-day basis is you got to have the recovery in order to help end it.
Thank you. Our next question, oh, I'm sorry.
Two parts to that is what
Just want to ask a follow-up question to that. So staying with you, Mr. Oliver, as an elected official, what can you do more to help those impacted by substance use disorders? And through a tangent, since they're usually related, mental health disorders.
Mental health is huge. I was a board member for the Medical Group Management Association back in 2010 when we originally cut some of the mental health in this state. And I remember clearly talking to the director of the physicians group at the time, and he said, this will have untold repercussions down the line. I feel like we're seeing those now. That statement has stuck with me. For what we can do now, there's treatment, obviously recovery centers, transitional housing is huge. We need to, once people help get off of it, do so, and other stuff that I can't get to.
Thank you. All right, our next question will be from Dave Andreessen, and it will be to Mr. Oliver.
Mr. Oliver, as you've made your rounds around the city, introducing yourself to residents, voters, maybe delivered lawn signs, I'm sure you've gotten this question a lot, so I'll ask it like a potential voter who's come across you on the street. Why should I vote for you instead of Councilor Gates? What strengths would you bring why would I vote for you instead of a two-time incumbent? And to counter that, Councilor Gates, what strengths do you have that you want to stay here as a city councilor? I know that we're not going back and forth on different things, but if you could just answer that question then afterwards. Thank you.
Okay. As I said before, one of the biggest things that's different about me is I'm just a young father with a young family. I feel I'm a little bit different than the other counselors that are on, most of the other counselors that are on here. I want to bring that perspective. I want to balance it out a little bit. I feel having been involved, I see some of those shortfallings firsthand when I talk to other parents. I see, that are involved in a variety of things that I do, and that perspective will be a little bit different. As far as my strengths, I've been in sales and service my entire life. I negotiate, I deal well with people. I work well making a good deal come together. So trying to find people and make people happy, find a middle ground, find a common ground, and find a way to move forward. That is what I do. I am a problem solver. My biggest strength, that's what I feel I could bring to this table.
Thank you. Councilor Gates.
Yep. If experience counts for anything, I have 4 years on this council. The other thing that would count for something is I'm retired. If the constituents want to see me at 10 o'clock in the morning, they certainly can, or anybody else for that matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next question will be once again from Kyle Stucker, and it will be addressed to Councilor Gates.
So, Councilor, can you give me one example of something you can do to further the efforts to improve downtown's revitalization? Specifically, one example as a sitting councilor you can either move forward or a new idea that you can bring to the table to help push that along.
Well, first of all, we have an economic development department in this city, and I believe they are the ones that have the education and the expertise to develop ideas to improve the downtown area. And I would depend on that department to come up with some decent ideas. I think there's a lot of competition provided by the new development out on Route 11 with downtown businesses. It puts an awful strain on your local small businesses. But I would depend primarily on the Economic Development Department to come up with ideas, present them to this council as the governing body, and explain why they're good, explain why they're bad, and let us decide which ones we wish to implement.
So there isn't a particular project or idea that you have for moving along?
Not really. I'm not trained in that area. I'm trained in building buildings, not in economic development.
Mr. Oliver.
I don't think there's a magic bullet to that one, to be truthful. Myself, I would continue working with economic development. We have a lot of strengths downtown. I know we talk about what's going, it's not where we want it to be, but there are a lot of good shops. There's a lot to offer. We have some strengths. I fully believe, and I think economic development does a good job trying to attract new businesses to this area. We need to give them the tools they need and to keep doing that job and keep attracting more businesses. Realize the Riverwalk is there. I've been to a few of those meetings. People are very optimistic about it at times. Some people I talk to, as I've been out, are completely unsold on it. So for me, would I support it? I don't know at this point. Still would want to have a whole lot more information than I have right now.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Harrison Thorpe to Mr. Oliver.
Yeah, Mr. Oliver, I know you say there's no silver bullet, but I mean, we have an Office of Economic Development that does a great job bringing jobs into the city, you know, with the Granite Ridge, with the Ridge. But is it time for, and Main Street does a great job for the downtown businesses that are here, but is it time to get a entity within the city that has some more teeth to it to attract businesses into these vacant storefronts? Is it time to narrow the focus, to have a entity within the city government that is solely responsible to fill those storefronts and get absentee landlords out, or at least try to get them out and try to get a viable business in there so that we have a viable downtown?
You mean like a marketing department to go after this?
Yeah.
Wouldn't be, you know, again, we're talking budgets, and we just talked tax cap a lot. Could it be a time? That would be a wonderful thing to do. Can we afford it? I don't know. We have some organizations that are doing a lot. Rochester Museum of Fine Arts just did a wonderful job downtown, from what I've seen, putting some, you know, paintings and things like that, trying to make it more attractive. We have several. We have other organizations, the Water Street, cutting everything down, that are working to try and do that. Should the government, we have a focus group. Again, we have the economic development. They are working with the city as a whole, but they certainly worry about the downtown. I've been to a bunch of those meetings. I go every Tuesday, pretty much, and they have them once a month, not every Tuesday, once a month on Tuesday. And I'll tell you, the downtown comes up every single time we meet. So they're definitely focused as far as that goes.
Thank you.
He wants to ask me more.
I have a follow-up on that. Sure. Maybe you could both speak to it. We use TIF money on Granite Ridge, and we use TIF money on the Ridge Marketplace. Could we somehow, would it be reasonable or acceptable or good for the city to use perhaps some kind of TIF money to get the downtown problem fixed? Is it that the problem seems pretty drastic for many years now, and like what's going on now is not working to fix the downtown?
So the buildings that keep coming up, from my understanding, are the same buildings we've been talking about for decades, literally. What I know is that the state laws, they're maintained exactly to where they need to be. State laws would have to be changed, state laws, in order for us to do more than we're doing. Everybody I know that has come in to looked at those buildings and said, I'm going to fix that, and has been unsuccessful. I got to think some smart people have tried it. So if you want to do that, you've got to go to the state level, you've got to get with the representatives, and you've got to figure it out. And we live in live free or die New Hampshire. So I'm not sure how that would fly, but if you really want to do that, that would be where to attack it. You got to go to the state, got to get some laws changed, and you got to give some people some different tools. Other than that, that's why I say there's no real magic bullet. You've got to kind of keep going along and plugging along and hopefully be able to make the deal that will help it. And if that includes TIF, and if that's a viable option, by all means. It's worked up at the Ridge.
All right, and we will allow Councillor Gates a 1-minute response as well to the question on whether or not a TIF in the downtown would be feasible.
First of all, the city council is going to decide where the TIF money goes. Second of all, I wanted to go to you, Mr. Thorpe, and did I misunderstand you? You said there should be some organization with teeth in it? Well, that concerns me from this perspective. The first thing that came to my mind is, are you advocating forcing business?
No.
Okay.
No. I meant someone that could make deals. The way you make deals with getting these large companies into the TIF districts, you know, that's like, look at what they're doing with getting the Amazon in southern New Hampshire and Londonderry. Taking that kind of an approach to really market the downtown with incentives to get those storefronts filled.
That I would respond by saying that's up to the Economic Development Department, and they have certain guidelines that they have to stay with. If they want those guidelines changed, if the council has the authority to change those guidelines, then we'll consider that and change it if need be. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next question will come from Dave Andreessen, and it will be addressed to Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Councillor Gates. Continuing to talk about economic development, specifically downtown. Every time I speak with Karen Pollard, the Economic Development Director, the big issue downtown is the absentee landlords who don't live in the city, these buildings that people want to rent, they're not code ready. And I know that you said that every state regulation and law is being followed, but the code is not, they're not able to be moved into immediately. And even after being approached by these potential businesses many times, these landlords choose not to and to continue to keep them busy. That seems to be, for many people I've talked to in the city, the major obstacle. Not using, you know, just to touch on what you said, having the teeth, but is the city doing everything that they can possibly do to get these landlords to comply? Because nothing seems to be working yet.
To the best of my knowledge, I believe the state statutes would need to change to allow cities to more aggressively address that issue. Until the state changes those statutes, the city's governing body is constrained by those statutes. Now, I agree with you. It is a problem, no question about it. But economic development or the state, the state has not changed the statutes governing that, and economic development, Karen has not been able to convince these people to change. As far as code enforcement, yeah, they can go in there and they can write citations. That may or may not have an effect. If you've got an absentee landlord that just doesn't care and wants to leave that building vacant for whatever reason, there's nothing the city can do about it until the state changes those governing statutes.
So would the city council advocate working with the state at the state level and trying to change some of these? Because it just seems like the major stumbling block, the major hurdle downtown.
As a councilor, I would encourage that, but the thing that comes to mind, that sticks in the back of my mind, is whatever state statutes that come out of the State House need to be constitutionally correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Oliver.
So the reason I said that I understand what you're saying, they're not able to be moved into, but that doesn't mean the codes aren't up to code for the buildings. And from what I know, talking to the code enforcement officers, that's where they are. We might not like it, but they're there. They maintain them at such a level that they can't, there's nothing more to be done as you're suggesting. I'm not sure what we're talking about. If we mean eminent domain, I'm not a big fan of that, to be honest with you. We need to, the state statutes are being followed. Frankly, we've talked about them and talked about them and talked about them. There are other assets in this city. in the downtown. At some point, we do keep doing what we're doing. There are some changes, there are some conversations that are going on, from my understanding, that maybe we'll have see the light of day in some of these particular buildings we're discussing. That said, until that happens, there's not much you can do from a city perspective, again, without changing the state laws. And so look at what you can do, work with that.
Thank you.
All right, we have time for one more quick round of questions from the media panel, so we'll move to Kyle Stucker with a question to Mr. Oliver.
Mention problem solving a little bit.
Yes.
So, hypothetically speaking, if you're presented with an issue before you that you ideologically disagree with, but you're hearing from some of your constituents that it's something they support, how would you handle that issue? Or how would you work, say, across the aisle with other individuals you don't agree with to come together in the city's best interests?
You're here to represent the city. If you're hearing from your constituents that you should do that, you've got to at least consider it. The best thing, I have an open mind about a lot of stuff. I haven't been around for a while. I don't have the experience. That said, I don't have the baggage. I am literally coming into a lot of situations going, I need to learn more. My biggest asset is my open ears and my open mind. So would I encounter something I fundamentally disagree with? Absolutely. But you're still, as a person that put together something, you need to hear what the opponent says and try and find some kind of middle ground. I do it all the time, and I could feel I would very readily do it at a city council level as well.
Thank you. Councilor Gates?
Sure. Some constituent comes to me and wants to do something that I'm fundamentally opposed to. The first thing I'm going to ask them is, why do you want to do this? What facts or data can you present to me that would change my mind? I'm more than willing to listen to their argument, their facts, their data, and if I'm swayed, I'm swayed. And I give them that option to prove to me that their idea is right as opposed to mine. And I'm certainly willing to listen to them.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to Harrison Thorpe with a question to Councilor Gates.
Councilor Gates, what do you see as Rochester's greatest strengths, and what do you see today as its greatest challenge?
Lots of challenges out there. Greatest strength is a good city council. I think we have a lot of different ideas. I think we meld those ideas to make this city run better. Challenges, education, opioid crisis, housing.
Well, I would rather, if you could just say a greatest challenge. What's the most important challenge right now?
Economic development is our greatest challenge.
Thank you.
Mr. Oliver.
Greatest strength, our people. We have a lot of great people, a lot of organizations doing a lot of great things around the city. Our greatest challenge, I think, at times is ourselves. I go out around the business community and I talk to people about being from Rochester, and they say, that's awesome. You guys are up and coming, you're doing the right things, you guys are movers and shakers, you're going in the right direction. I come around our town sometimes and we don't tend to view ourselves a little, as positively. We tend to see our warts a little more than outsiders. I think we need to change our own perspective a little bit to help show everybody else what we can be, and that will help attract what we want to be.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our final question will come from Mr. Dave Andreessen, and it will be addressed to Mr. Oliver.
Okay, Mr. Oliver, in your opening remarks, you said that one of the reasons that you're running for city council is that you've seen the city council, you're not hearing a lot of discussion on a lot of things that you feel are important, such as schools and green spaces, are the two particular things that I picked out there. We've heard about the Credo Center funding. We've heard about all the great things that the school department's doing. We've also heard about the Riverwalk. We've heard about a number of different initiatives that citizens have been taking here. One of the great things about being a city councilor is that you can introduce resolutions to the city council. What would one of the first things that you would want to present to the city council as something that you would want to see, like maybe a pet project per se?
I don't know that I have a pet project, honestly, Dave. My two major concerns when it comes to mind for as far as the education and the school systems and the green spaces is I made a presentation for City Council and discussed how year on year we keep what we're funding below state average for our schools grows and grows and grows. It's putting a strain on our school system. We've done some good things with the Credo Center, but currently, based on our student population and the average cost per student, when I go to the New Hampshire website, we're about $7 million under state average, shy thereof. That, again, having been involved with RYSA, different things like that, I know that while Roger Allen Park, wonderful thing, there's fees that go along that make it very difficult for some of the clubs down there, which is why I would want to see some green spaces. I'd like to at least open up conversations about that, understanding that there would be a lot of challenges there.
And TJ, if I may, sure. For Councilor Gates, so the question would be for you has the City Council discuss schools and green space? Has that been something that has been worked on here in your 4 years on the City Council? Because Mr. Oliver says that he just doesn't quite feel that the City Council's really addressed that as much. What are your feelings on that?
Out of the two topics, green space and schools, that you've mentioned, the school is the most often discussed in council and at budget time in particular. Green space is not something that's come up frequently in council discussions. So that would be the answer to that question.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That will conclude the media panel portion of the questionings. We do have one question that came from the audience. I will address it to Mr. Oliver. And a response by Councilor Gates, 1 minute on this. How green do you see Rochester, and what proposals do you have to support, or what proposals do you have or support to make the city fossil fuel free?
I'm bowing out of that one. I truthfully don't have the information I would need to answer that properly. I would have to learn a whole lot to get on board with, to intelligently answer that. Obviously, you can always have improvement, but I couldn't speak to it.
All right, thank you. Councilor Gates?
First of all, I don't think the city's going to be fossil fuel free, and the reason for that is economics. Any of you that think that green energy, wind energy, solar energy, whatever, is equal economically to fossil fuels, you need to do some research. Fossil fuels have always been, and I think will always be, less expensive than green energy. So I don't foresee Rochester as a city depending entirely or even majorly on other than fossil fuels. And unless you want to see your tax rate go sky high, because they are expensive.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question just in. And this I'll address to Councilor Gates with a response from Mr. Oliver. The Rochester City Council recently voted to fund a renovation at the Credo Tech Center at Spalding High School. Did you vote for this project? And if you weren't on the council, would you have voted for this project? Please explain your position.
Yes, I voted for the project. I spent my entire working career as a self-employed carpenter general contractor. And over the last, say, 20 years, in the trade publications that I used to subscribe to and read, there were numerous articles, and they increased numerically about the growing shortage of qualified tradespeople. We need graduates from the Credo Tech Center in order to maintain a good level of high-quality tradespeople in the community. As I've said in front of the council when we were discussing this, if we don't have good quality tradespeople, one of these days in the not too distant future, you're going to call a carpenter to come and replace your front door or a window or something like that, and you're going to pay that person $150 an hour or more if this shortage exacerbates. So I support the students coming out of the Trade Center. The other thing that we all have to keep in mind, college is not for everyone.
Thank you, Councilor Gates. Mr. Oliver.
Yes, I would have. We need the trades professions. They're important. They're high-quality jobs that are right here. And as was just said, everybody can't go into computer programming. There are other perfectly good things that these kids can do. I'm imagining my boys will want to go into it, quite honestly, from some of them. So it's something we need to do, it's something we need to support. We need to support it at a high level because things are more and more and more competitive out there, and it's harder and harder to get a job and maintain a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. All right, we have our final question from the audience now. This one reads, the opioid crisis needs much attention. Studies consistently show a correlation between youth sports and prevention of drug addiction. Rochester is the only city in our area which does not provide field space for youth sports. Do you believe Rochester should provide field space for youth sports? And I'll start with Mr. Oliver.
Yes. As I mentioned before, this is what I was referring to. We don't have a publicly funded field that a lot of our youth sports play at. When I was president of the Rochester Youth Soccer Club, one of the things I went around is I went and talked to a lot of the other presidents about a variety of things. One thing that came up was fields. Every single other town I talked to, and I talked to a lot, had a publicly funded field. Dover even was so far as having helping to the cost of their new concession stand. They split the cost with the clubs. So the city further supported that. Most of the actually all the clubs I talked to, all felt that if they had to support the cost that we did for the fields, they would go under and not be able to. Considering the opioid crisis, our city, it would help those clubs reduce their cost and allow entry to more kids if we could support it more. And I do believe a positive role models would help with the opioid crisis.
Thank you. Councilor Gates.
If you want publicly funded fields, which department of the city do you want to cut funding from? Do you want the police chief to cut an officer that he wants and needs for the protection of the citizens of the city? Or do you want a publicly funded sports field? Now, I'm not opposed to that, but I'm telling you right now, when it comes to us at this governing body deciding whether we're going to spend money on publicly funded sports field, which isn't a bad idea, or a law enforcement officer or another firefighter, where would you folks prefer the money be spent? And are you willing to have your taxes increase to pay this? Are you willing to contribute additional money to help fund this type of things? I think wouldn't Roger Allen Park come to fruition because of donations from folks like you that support that?
Thank you very much. Okay, that will conclude our question and answers with the Ward 5 City Council candidates. We will now take a brief 5-minute intermission. We'll change things around a little bit, and we will proceed to our mayoral candidate forum in 5 minutes. So thank you once again to Councilor Gates and to Mr. Oliver for being here. Let's give them a big round of applause. Go ahead and shake. We'll be right back.
You too, Sam.
Hey, good job. Thank you. Thanks, DJ. Good job, Sam. All set. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are now going to move to the mayoral part of our candidates forum. Again, my name is TJ Jean. I'm the past chairman of the board of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, as well as the administrator at the Gaffney Home. Tonight, the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce is pleased to be able to present this candidate forum as our community service to the public and have the opportunity here to listen to our mayoral candidates. This evening we have 4 candidates. The candidates for mayor will make their remarks in the order that was determined by a drawing of the cards just a few minutes ago. Each will provide 2 minutes of opening remarks and be asked a series of questions on various issues from our media representatives, as well as asked from questions of the audience. All questions submitted via phone or email will be done at the end of the forum. And those of you who are listening at home that wish to contact us to ask a question, we can be reached this evening, October 23rd, at 335-7557, or you may email forum@rochesternh.net. Representatives from the chamber, our volunteers Lisa Stanley of Whitway Supply and Blaine Cox, the deputy city manager, are on hand to field those questions and bring them up to me at the conclusion of the media panel portion. We also remind audience members that we do have index cards over on the table to my right, your left, and you may fill out one of those cards and those questions will come up as well. And we'll ask those questions as time allows at the end of our forum. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you our candidates for mayor. We will start with incumbent mayor, Caroline McCarley.
Good evening.
Former mayor, Douglas LaChance. State Representative Matthew Scruton, and Mr. Donald Barnes. These are your 4 candidates for mayor, and based on the drawing of cards, we will hear from Mr. Matt Scruton first.
Well, thank you, TJ. It's a privilege to be here, and I certainly want to thank everybody that was involved with putting this together tonight, and the Rochester Commerce as well. I'm a Republican. I'm a state representative. I own and operate a farm here in Rochester, and I have over 10 years of municipal and state experience. And I'm running for mayor. I love the city, and we have a great city council I'm very proud of. I think we can do more in our city to improve the downtown. I'd like to help the council as we continue to look for opportunities for increased economic development in our business parks, as well as ways to improve our downtown and plan for future infrastructure needs of the city. I support our public safety and keeping our tax rate low. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you. We will now hear from Mayor McCarley.
Yes, thank you. 2 years ago, when I decided to run for mayor, I came here and spoke a little bit about the image that Rochester has, both within our community and outside of our community. And I said then, and I believe now, that over the years we've gotten a bad rap. And I also think that the times are finally changing. Over the last 2 years, we've seen some really good things happening in our city. The Ridge is thriving. We've opened the annex for one-shop business for those who want to do business with the city of Rochester. We have some new stores downtown. We regularly see stories about the innovative programs going on in all of our school buildings. A couple of examples. Over 750 people attended the first Festival of Trees in downtown Rochester last December. I know because I took up the tickets all night, and people left saying, Rochester is so beautiful, the downtown is so pretty. I've never come here before. Amazing. The farmers market has been open for its 2nd year of success. It's a delightful way to spend a Tuesday afternoon. We've had the 2nd annual Gay Pride Day with double the amount of people that came to it. And the Riverwalk dinner in June was the first of its kind, and over 70 people attended. Those are saying things about what our community is up to and what we are doing. But what's interesting to me about it is people outside of Rochester are talking about how things are going on here. But unfortunately, not enough of us are talking about it. Not enough of us get to our downtown shops. Not enough of us tell people, oh, you really got to go see or try or stop in. And that's on all of us. And I want to say that I am incredibly proud to be the mayor of Rochester, and we have a pretty amazing community. And let's not forget that. Thank you, and I look forward to the conversation this evening.
Thank you, Mayor McCarley. We'll now turn to Mr. Donald Barnes.
Thank you, TJ. Hi, I'm Donald Barnes. Please call me Don. I've been a resident of Rochester since 1986. I'm currently a project manager and technician at Safran Aerospace. If you or your kids have been involved in Roger Allen or Babe Ruth baseball, or maybe even with Spalding skiing, you may have just called me Coach in the past. The reason that I decided to dip my toe into the political waters was that I've been a spectator of politics for a long time and decided that maybe Rochester could use some of my help. In my profession, what I do is I fix broken things and I build new things, and I think Rochester could use a few fixes. One of the things I'd like to really take a look at is our property taxes to make sure that they're fair, equal, and under control. I'd like to look at repealing some unused, unenforced, and maybe outdated regulations that might be making it more difficult for businesses to thrive here in Rochester. And some of you may have heard this on WMUR from my short interview. I have also pledged that I will donate my salary, if elected, to a fund to provide scholarships for graduating high school seniors from Spalding High School. And I'll do that as long as I'm in the office. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, and finally, we will hear from former Mayor Doug LaChance.
Thank you, TJ. My name is Doug LaChance. I want to thank the Chamber for organizing and coordinating this forum tonight. I was born and raised in Rochester, graduated from Spalding High School in 1983. I currently am a real estate agent and own a small craft winery here in the city of Rochester. I'm running this year because our downtown really needs, in my opinion, a lot more attention than it's been getting over the years. I think we need to be as willing as a community and as eager to have the same passion and commitment of resources in our downtown as we have had in our industrial and our big commercial sectors of the city. So my focus and my primary dialogue will be about our downtown and my ideas and thoughts about what we can do to improve it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will now turn to the media panel question portion of this forum. Questions from the media panel will be conducted by alternating media representatives to alternating candidates. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the questions, and we have had some follow-up questions. If there are follow-up questions, we will have a 30-second timer to allow each candidate the opportunity to address the follow-up. So our first question, and let me introduce the media panel. We have Dave Andreessen from WTSN. We have Kyle Stucker from Foster's Daily Democrat and Harrison Thorpe from the Rochester Voice. So we thank the media panel for being with us this evening. And our first question will be from Harrison Thorpe of the Rochester Voice to Mayor Caroline McCarley, followed by responses from Doug LaChance, Matt Scruton, and Don Barnes.
Mayor McCarley, hi. What's, in your first term of mayor, what would you say has been your single biggest achievement? And also, what has been your biggest disappointment?
I think I'm going to do those in reverse order. I think probably my biggest disappointment, actually there's really two that are probably equal. Certainly, we haven't seen as much energy in downtown as I would have liked. I've spent some time talking to some of the absentee landlords, been frustrated by responses, but have not been able to move that needle as much as I'd like. That being said, I've been very pleased to have the Tuesday morning meetings with the downtown merchants and hear their ideas and all that we're working. In terms of biggest achievement, I'm incredibly proud to have done the work in working with the hospital to get the recovery center open and working with the other groups in the community that are trying to do something about the drug crisis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next answer will come from Doug LaChance.
Well, not having been in office, I really don't have any, thing to speak to. But I am hosting an open forum on Tuesdays from 5 to 7 at Moe's. If anybody wants to come down and talk about their ideas for downtown and the opioid crisis that we're facing, and that is a national crisis, or any other concerns that they have in the city, I really would like to hear from all the citizens who want to come down from 5 to 7 at Moe's. Thanks.
Mr. Scruton.
Again, it's a difficult question, as only one of the four have been, is currently mayor, but a number of accomplishments that the city should be proud of include the development out on the Ridge, the Recovery Center, as Mayor McCarley mentioned, and there's a lot going on in the city that is good and positive. I think there are a few areas for improvement, including doing more to help with the opioid crisis, but certainly the Recovery Center is a good thing when people can come in to the police department or the hospital at any hour of the day and receive help. I think that's a positive step in the right direction.
Excellent, thank you. Don Barnes.
I think the accomplishments that I've seen in the city that I would be most proud of is attracting businesses like Safran Aerospace and the expansion that's come along with that at Albany. My disappointments, I have two big disappointments. The downtown area. I've lived in Rochester for 31 years. I don't even like the downtown area. My other disappointment, and I was thinking about this at 5:30 the other morning when I was on my way to work, and I was at the intersection down by China Palace at the lights, and I was solicited by a young lady at the corner there. And I was very disappointed in that would happen to me in Rochester.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Dave Andreessen of WTSN to Doug LaChance, followed by responses from Matt Scruton, Don Barnes, and Caroline McCarley.
So we've heard a lot about economic development and downtown development, and in your opening remarks, you said you have a lot of great ideas about this. One of the things that, in my time covering the city of Rochester, has been that major hurdle has been the absentee landlords, has been the buildings that are not up to code, they're not ready to be moved into, and even after a prospective tenant approaches one of these landlords, they're still not willing to rent. Is the city doing enough to make that landlord actually turn over that building and rent and do something with it? And what are some of your ideas to get that ball rolling? Because that really seems to be that one major hurdle to get the downtown vibrant, because it's come a long way. There's a lot of great businesses down there. It's now a destination for a lot of other people from outside the city.
It's come a long way in arts and entertainment, I'll give you that, and we have some fine restaurants and some great little shops. But, just from Hanson up Union and Wakefield, and the North Main Street, I walked one day from North Main Street to my office at 107 or 170 South Main Street, and I counted 23 empty storefronts. So, 23 is a lot of empty storefronts, and I don't think we are doing enough. As a realtor, I believe in property owner rights, so I believe that these building owners have some rights. But I think their rights stop where our rights begin, our rights as a community and our rights as other landowners in the city. When you depreciate your buildings and you let them sit in that kind of condition, you're depreciating the value of every other property around you. That brings the tax revenue down, and that increases the tax burden on residential people. So one of my ideas is I think the city should seriously consider a class action suit against some of these harder nuts to crack to motivate them.
Thank you. We'll now move to Matt Scruton.
Thank you. In a free market economy, the landlords have the right to keep their buildings vacant if they so choose, as long as they're paying the property taxes, as long as the buildings don't present any clear and present danger to the public. Those buildings can remain vacant. I think as the economic forces change, you'll see more development come into the downtown. But to encourage that, I would promote RSA 79E, which allows landlords to reinvest in their properties and be taxed at the pre-renovated assessment value of the property. So in other words, they can put money into the property and pay tax as if the property was not restored, and that's for a fixed period of time, but it really does encourage landlords to reinvest in the buildings. A lot of the buildings are vacant because they do not meet code, so that would certainly help the buildings and the landlords to be restored and brought up to code.
Thank you. Don Barnes.
I took a recent inventory of some downtown businesses, and what I found is that in the downtown, I guess some people refer to it as the entertainment district, we have 3 tattoo shops, 2 vape shops, 3 pawn shops, 2 condemned buildings, and 6 or 8 restaurants. That's not my idea of entertainment or a downtown. Somehow or another, we need to encourage some businesses to come down there that are going to attract people to the downtown, bring people into the city to enjoy the restaurants. And I don't think that these kind of businesses, although they are viable businesses, I don't think these are the kind of businesses that are going to attract the people we want into the downtown area to spend their money.
Thank you. Caroline McCarley.
I think we have stepped up in the last year and a half on the code issues. These absentee landlords are beginning to get bills to say, come in and fix this stuff, or there's going to be bigger and bigger bills every day if you don't, for the days that you don't bother. I think that was an important step. I would in no way say we have done enough. I think I mentioned I've spent a little bit of time with the absentee landlord of what we nicely refer to as the Hoffman Building. I started out nice. I got a little bit less nice. We finally actually made an offer on the property at what we are charging for property taxes. And the answer was, well, maybe it's at least time for me to reassess the building. It's a long, hard slog. I respectfully would probably not go the route of a class action suit. I think you're guaranteed to lose and you will have spent taxpayer dollars. But I would recommend, try the frame shop, try the candy store, drop by Jetpack Comics, go to the Performance Center, go to Under the Moon, go to Skeletones. Soon there's going to be an exotic creature store. We're making headway, and it's good.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Kyle Stucker of Foster's Daily Democrat to Matt Scruton, followed by responses from Don Barnes, Caroline McCarley, and Doug LaChance.
So staying on downtown for a little bit, I'm kind of curious to hear, as we heard from one candidate, Mr. Barnes, about the types of individuals he'd like to see in downtown. We're talking about absentee landlords. Setting aside the absentee landlord part of the equation right now, what's one thing that can be done or that you can shepherd in office to improve downtown, and what are the individuals you really want to see coming in downtown, whether they be community members, businesses, or individuals, tourists coming into the area to enjoy it?
Thank you for that question.
That's to Matt, sorry.
That's me, yes. Thank you for that question. There are a number of things that can be done to improve the downtown. I'd certainly consider doing more with the, I say doing more, but I think the city's already doing quite a bit with the Rochester Main Street program, and they do an excellent job. The director there is very competent in working with existing landlords and tenants. I mentioned RSA 79E as a way to promote the renovation of the buildings that don't meet code. As far as individual businesses, I think in the current global economic times that we face, when you're competing with the Amazon.coms and all the other online businesses, you really need to find a niche in the service area. So I would look for more service-oriented businesses to locate in the downtown rather than the brick and mortar stores that compete with Walmart. I think the Ridge is a great development, but it also has put pressure on the small mom and pop businesses downtown.
Thank you. Don Barnes.
Thanks. Everywhere I travel around the country, and I just returned from a trip to Denton, Texas, that's just suburban Dallas, the trend that I see is beer tourism. If you look around us, Dover's got 2 breweries and a craft distillery. Portsmouth, with a population of 2/3 of Rochester's, has 6 breweries. Somersworth even has one, and Rollingsford has a craft cidery. Rochester has nothing to offer in that area. Every day I see buses rolling around, the Maine beer bus, the Boston beer bus, Granite State Growler Tours bringing busloads of people to come to these places, to sample their products, to spend their money, to eat their food. Rochester has nothing to offer to any of those people. It's not a cure-all, but it may be one more piece of the puzzle for downtown Rochester.
Thank you. All right, Doug LaChance.
Thank you. Whatever we do, it has to be cooperative and collaborative and comprehensive. And by that, I mean we got to get all the people involved. We got to get the chamber involved. We got to get code enforcement, certainly. We should get, all the people who have a stake in downtown, the arts and entertainment community, and the business owners themselves. But there's a word, gentrification. We've probably all heard it. We know what it is. We need to have a resident in downtown that has greater economic ability. And you got to do that by continuing to hammer on codes with the out-of-code buildings. You've got to get, you can't just put up a bunch of beautiful businesses and expect a whole bunch of people to flock into downtown. You got to have a consumer base residentially that lives in a community downtown that can walk to these places. So, it's not just about getting these old buildings fixed up. It's also about getting some of these substandard housing units that we have in and around our downtown fixed up so that people who have more ability to buy goods and services, because, there's a reason we have the businesses we have, Mr. Barnes.
Oh, Caroline
I was pretty
McCarley.
close to done, thank you.
I think we've all got ideas for what we think would be kind of a unique and fun shop. I personally am fond of the idea of turning the Hoffman building into a closed, covered market with 4 or 5 small entities in there that perhaps would be able to afford the rental payments and really make a go of it, attracting a diverse type of products. But I also think that Mr. LaChance makes a good point. We do have some issue with housing, and these days, in a lot of communities, it's about walkable communities. And we have a lot of 2nd and 3rd story buildings with potential apartments that are substandard at this point in time, and I think that needs a real good look on our part as well.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Dave Andreessen to Don Barnes, followed by responses from Caroline McCarley, Doug LaChance, and Matt Scruton.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barnes, and this is actually a question for the 3 candidates. As you're making your way around town and you're introducing yourself and you're letting potential voters know that you're running for mayor, I'm sure you've gotten the question, and I'll pose it as a potential voter. Why should I vote for you instead of Caroline McCarley? And now for Madam Mayor, your response would be, in your term as the mayor, why you would want to stay on another term, any unfinished business, anything else that you think that you can bring to the city. So that's my question. Why would I vote for you instead of Mayor McCarley?
Great question, thanks. I think you'd vote for me because I'm like a lot of you people. I've got 2 kids that graduated from Spalding and are now attending college. I'm struggling to pay their tuition. I'm struggling with my property taxes that have tripled since I've owned my property, and I see no increase in city services. These are the kind of things I'd like to take a look at and do something about. I'm facing an ever-increasing tax burden where my taxes go up faster than my wages, think nothing of all the other expenses around me. And I'm a fresh new face in politics. I'm not being recycled from another position or been in the city in various seats and positions for a number of years. And I think I can bring a fresh perspective and some new and fresh ideas into the office of mayor.
Thank you. We will now hear a response from Caroline McCarley.
Oh, okay, I thought I was going to go last for some reason. I don't have a problem with being described as recycled. I've committed the better part of my adult life and lived here with my 3 children and married to a native, and I love this community, and I decided to be mayor because I think I bring an energy and an enthusiasm and a belief that we can always do better, and I would hope that the last 2 years have been indicators of that. I think we've done a very good job of balancing all the things that we have to balance, keeping everyone's property taxes in mind, keeping what are the most critical city services. And there are 2 or 3 more things I want to see done, which I was going to do in my closing, but I have 15 seconds. Maybe I'll leave them out of the closing. I want to make sure we get the last $4 million of that technology center dollars to finish off the technology center. I do want to continue to focus on downtown, and I want to make sure that we get a new public works garage in place.
Thank you. Doug LaChance.
Thank you. Well, first I start by telling people you got a great opportunity because you got 4 great candidates this year to choose from. Not like some other elections in our past, right? But I tell people you should vote for me because I care more deeply and passionately, in my opinion, about our downtown than everybody else in the field. And I'm sure they probably feel the same way about themselves. But I've worked in downtown a long time. I've also got another concept about forming a community loan fund so that we can actually help people who operate businesses buy the buildings they're in. Because a lot of the people who operate businesses in downtown would probably like to own their buildings, but they either can't afford the mortgage or they need a stopgap, some gap funding to help them get a mortgage. So I think if we think outside the box a little bit more and get creative, and yeah, maybe we would lose a class action suit, but we got to try something because, I know one thing. If you want what you've always had, do what you've always done.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Matt Scruton.
I think it comes down to whether or not you think we are in a better spot than we were 2 years ago regarding the direction you want to see the city go if you're not satisfied with the current path. If you are satisfied with the current path, then you should keep the current city council members and the current mayor. If you think we can do more, then you might look for opportunities in the city council or in the mayoral candidate race for change. I offer a different viewpoint in some areas, and I am a conservative Republican, and I would work to keep the tax rate down low. We have done well with the tax cap, and that's much to the city council's credit. However, I think we could do more in that area as well as other areas in the community.
Thank you. Next question will be from Kyle Stucker to Caroline McCarley, followed by responses from Doug LaChance, Matt Scruton, and Donald Barnes.
So in terms of the tax cap, please provide at least one idea then for how you can manage things or do things a little bit differently to help bring down those taxes while maintaining city services or, say, improving city services.
Well, certainly it's been mentioned, the more we can build the commercial and industrial base, the better off we will be. I see the next phase at the Ridge as being an important part of that, and we are certainly working quite hard on it. I also do think that in terms of providing services, we need to make sure we take very good advantage of the CDBG funding we get from the feds, because there are programs that need that support, and we need to also make sure that the state continues to live up to its obligations and perhaps not make any additional demands on our local taxpayers and our city.
Thank you. Doug LaChance.
Absolutely. I'm going to echo the same thing. Expand the base. Increase your property values. That'll increase your tax revenue. And we got to sit down with our state representative delegation and our state senator and say no more, passing the costs on. I mean, the state doesn't like it when the feds pass the costs on to them. In fact, didn't we pass a state law in 1984, right, about that? So, I mean, those are the things we have to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Matt Scruton.
Yeah, of course, we need to work to continue to increase economic development and expansion of our business parks. We should continue, and I'm doing this as well as a number of other state reps and our state senator to try to reduce the unfunded mandates within the state and have the state be accountable for their commitments, whether it's the retirement commitment or others. We also need to continue to look for cost share opportunities, the opportunities where we can leverage taxpayer dollars against state or federal dollars to get more bang for the buck for our taxpayers.
Thank you. And Don Barnes.
I think the betterment of the city and the controlling of taxes is going to come from attracting new high-tech businesses into the area. And again, Safran and Albany have been perfect examples. If we had another 6 companies like that, we would probably run out of workers and have the whole city employed, or at least anybody who wanted to work at relatively high-paying jobs with good benefits. Those kind of companies will generate a lot of tax revenue for us, along with the economic expansion. If people are working, they have money to spend in our stores, money to spend in our restaurants, and money to spend on their taxes.
Excellent. Thank you. We will now hear from Harrison Thorpe with a question to Doug LaChance, followed by responses from Matt Scruton, Don Barnes, and Caroline McCarley.
Yeah, Mr. LaChance, Can you think of something specific that you would like to see implemented to help in the city's fight against the scourge of drug addiction in our community?
Thank you, and that's really a tough question in 1 minute, but I think we should have a police substation right at the corner of South Main Street and Columbus Ave, for one thing. That seems to be the corner where we get most of our calls to, and certainly most of our overdoses. You can sit there at the China Palace and watch them all night long at the Cumberland Farms parking lot. But we need to get together with Frisbee and with the local care providers in our community and in the county and with the sheriff, because he's on the front line of this crisis. And we do need earlier childhood education in our schools, so we got to get the school board involved in this, and we've got to expand treatment. We used to have Seabourn Hospital right down there in Dover. Frisbee used to have a chemical dependency unit. I don't believe they have one now. I know they've got the new recovery program just started, right? But we used to have 6 beds right in Frisbee for chemical dependency. Rehabs. We don't have the number of beds in this state that we once had. You know, just a few months ago, or a few weeks back, Geraldine Sylvester passed away. Did you hear that? And recovery didn't have a bigger friend in the state than Geraldine Sylvester.
Thank you. Matt Scruton.
I think we should continue to clean up areas where drugs are used. There was a recent cleanup, for instance, on off Water Street that certainly I think will help as we continue to identify the areas where drugs are being used and cleaning those areas up. The unfortunate reality is that a number of families and lives are impacted by this crisis, and education helps, but there still will be abuse, and we need to find ways to support the families, not just the individuals, but the families that are affected by the drug crisis. Rehab facilities like Hope on Haven Hill do a great job. However, there is a shortage, as Doug mentioned, of beds available. So we need to look for other options in addition to the ones we have, so we can expand the help and the support network.
Don Barnes.
Well, I have a little bit of experience in substance abuse with family members, and it's very obvious that if people don't want help, they're not going to seek help, and the help won't do them any good. I'm a fan of enforcement rather than coddling. These people that are on the streets, such as the young lady who propositioned me the other morning, I don't know why they're there and why they're allowed to be there. I don't know if we need to enforce some sort of a loitering ordinance that would keep these people off the streets and keep them from harassing motorists at a stoplight. At 5:30 in the morning on my way to work, I certainly wasn't interested in what she termed as a date. And I can only assume what the outcome of that may have been. But everywhere I go around the city, I see people who I'm assuming must be involved in something less than culpable because of where they are and how they're acting. And I see these people day after day after day.
Caroline McCarley.
I certainly think we're doing an awful lot, but I think we can do more. I think our police are doing community policing and enforcement, which is exactly what they need to be doing. I've been working pretty closely with the hospital, with some meetings with the Housing Authority and others about some transitional housing opportunities, expansion of the homeless shelter. The most promising thing I see right now, we've added some police education in the elementary schools. There's a LADAC counselor at the high school, all incredibly important. I think probably the most important next step I see that we'll be taking, again, in concert with the hospital, is they're going to be opening a mental health center that will be open on weekends, and anybody can walk in, no matter whether you can pay. And that is the kind of commitment the hospital is showing us, and I think we have to keep working incredibly closely with them, help them whenever we can so that we can try to keep making a difference.
Thank you. All right, our next question will again be from, I'm just going through a different order here, from Harrison Thorpe, and it will be to Caroline McCarley, followed by responses from Doug LaChance, Matt Scruton, and Don Barnes.
Mayor McCarley, I guess I would ask you, maybe you could tell us, and it'd be good to hear from everybody about what your feelings are in your position on Keno gambling.
Sure. I will, in all likelihood, be voting to put Keno, to allow Keno gambling in the city of Rochester. I will say that I have had not a single call by any of our pouring establishments who have asked me to support it because they are interested. So I don't know the level of interest on that side of things. I regret that the state of New Hampshire regularly pays for public schools through games of chance, but I do very much would like to see the support of the money to help offset some of the money we pay for all-day kindergarten. And so from my perspective, I will be voting to have it allowed in the city.
Thank you. Doug LaChance.
Thank you. You can no more stop drinking by passing prohibition laws than you can stop gambling by not allowing gambling and not voting in favor of it. I am thoroughly supporting and will be voting to allow Keno in the city, and I think we should have more gambling to pay for more things, more taxes, regulated gambling. I'm not talking about just, you know, hey, what, everybody probably works someplace. We got a football pool right now every weekend. I mean, you got poker games on Friday night. People are going to gamble. So why not keep the money here where it can do some good, regulate it, get your cut from it, and, you know.
You gonna run for the legislature
services.
anytime soon?
This is going to be probably my last campaign.
Thank you. Now move to Matt Scruton.
I think this was a mistake by our governor and our House leadership and to try to fund kindergarten with Keno. I certainly did support kindergarten, but oftentimes in the House you'll find that the only way to pass bad legislation, such as Keno, is to tie it to good legislation, such as kindergarten. So in the House I voted for this simply to get kindergarten approved, the funding for communities that wanted to go full-time. However, I've recently drafted LSR 2018-2403, which is a bill that will essentially make Keno illegal in the state. So I am thoroughly opposed to Keno, and the way this is being implemented in drinking establishments I think is a gross mistake. I don't think people that are inebriated have the best judgment, and I don't think Keno is best for Rochester or any other community in the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you. Don Barnes.
I'm not opposed to gambling in general, but I am opposed to Keno in our pouring establishments here in Rochester. I don't think that we can gamble our way to prosperity in our schools on the backs of one single game, and I really don't think that Keno belongs in our pouring establishments. Our establishments in the downtown and outside of town areas have enough problems to deal with regulations, drunken patrons, and such, that they don't need to add Keno to that mix, and I would definitely have to vote against it.
Thank you. Okay, our next question will be from Dave Andreessen of WTSN, and it will be to Doug LaChance, followed by responses from Matt Scruton, Don Barnes, and Caroline McCarley.
Okay, as you know how the process works in introducing resolutions, a lot of these come from your constituents in your ward. Also, they come from different things that you might have an interest in, things that you would want to see changed in the city that you would present to the city council. What would be the first resolution that you would bring to the city council for consideration?
Well, I hadn't thought about that at all. First thing I'd probably do is, get together with the Economic Development Department and the Chamber of Commerce and sit down and say, what do you need? What types of changes do you need to see either in zoning or planning, and also in conjunction with the fire department and the fire marshal? What do you need for local municipal changes to get things turned around downtown? What's the biggest thing that you need, as staff and as professionals in the field? And that, the result from that meeting would be my first resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear a response from Matt Scruton.
Similar to Doug, I don't have a specific resolution that I'd propose. I would want to meet with the city manager, the city council, police, fire, and other department heads and determine what is the plan for the next 5 years? I know the city council has been working towards several goals, and I want to be supportive of that and the work that has been done.
Thank you. And Don Barnes.
Again, I don't have a resolution that I think I'd take to the city council. I may instead ask, what resolutions do we no longer need? What ordinances can we repeal? What can we do away with? what would make life simpler and easier for business people and for the taxpayers of Rochester that we don't need to have on our books, that we don't need to waste our time trying to enforce.
Thank you. Caroline McCarley.
I guess one resolution that I have been looking at for quite a few months and been in conversations with the fire department has been about the possibility of Rochester putting in a safe station or even a safe station light idea. It's been incredibly successful in Manchester. I know for a fact, because I've seen the stats, we have folks in Rochester who drive over to Manchester to be able to get access through that fire department and that safe station. But there is a resourcing problem, and I understand that, and I have not taken it forward because I would not do that without being confident that the fire department felt they could be supportive as well in terms of resourcing issue. But as Chief Close is well aware, I have not given up on this one.
Thank you. Okay, our next question will be from Kyle Stucker, and it will be to Matt Scruton, followed by responses from Don Barnes, Caroline McCarley, and Douglas Chance.
Actually, Mr. Moderator, if you'll allow it, I actually just want to ask Don Barnes one follow-up question before I get to a question there.
Certainly.
Just out of curiosity, do you have a particular ordinance in mind right now that you don't approve of or would like to do away with, something that the city shouldn't be enforcing anymore?
No, I don't have any particular ordinance in mind, but I would like the city council to take a look at the ordinances out there, see if there's any we really don't need and that are a burden to businesses or other people.
Thank you. Okay, next question comes to you, Kyle.
Yep. So in some of the questionnaires that we sent out to you, talked a little bit about open and accessible government, that obviously one of you is a sitting individual and an incumbent individual. The other three individuals here tonight have all expressed some degree that they feel that Rochester's government isn't as open or as accessible to the city as it could be, whether that's led to apathy or other detrimental things for the city is up to you. Just kind of curious to hear, regardless of your stance on the openness of the city's government, what can you do specifically to improve the effectiveness and openness of working for your constituents?
And that is going to Matt Scruton.
Well, I think the city already does a very good job of sharing information. If you've visited their website, you can see a lot of information there, past minutes, meeting agendas. The city of Rochester is a very open government, and I would take exception to anyone that said it was not open. The city's to be commended for promoting all that they have with, I don't know, have you been on that, the Facebook site? I mean, they have police, fire, they're actively promoting what they're doing in the community, and I think they do a very good job at that, and I'd like to see that continue.
Don Barnes?
One of the things that I'd like to do is have a regularly scheduled Ask the Mayor open forum, either on WTSN, in the paper, in person, write in, call in, but bring the people to the office, find out what they're thinking, what questions they have, and field any questions that they'd like to ask in a fair and reasonable manner.
Excellent. Caroline McCarley?
I think we do a very good job of being an open and accessible community. We certainly allow for public input at every council committee meeting, at the council workshops. We are all on email. We get a lot of email that I think all of us consciously try to make sure we respond to. It's interesting. We've actually had a couple of people say to a council member or two, you know, I would come to your public safety committee if it weren't on TV, because I don't want to be on TV with anyone hearing my questions. Anecdotal, obviously, but people approach government in many different ways. The one thing I try to do as mayor is answer every call, every letter, every email, and I try to spend time when I'm not at work down in Medford, Massachusetts, being in my office and making sure everybody knows that anytime they want to come in, I'm available. And I think that is a really important thing for all of our counselors to do also, is to get out and be at meetings and be seen around town.
Thank you. And Doug LaChance.
Yes, thank you. I too think that the city does a very good job getting information. I think probably, and as far as openness and having a monthly thing, when I was the mayor, you used to come up once in a while. We had coffee and donuts from 8 to noon every Saturday. It's not something I would probably do again because of my work schedule, but I think the biggest frustration people have when talking with any city government is the whole planning process, the whole zoning process. I just wanted to open a business downtown, and I went in and they told me this, and then 2 weeks later I got a letter in the mail and they told me this, and then I got that. I think we have to really work on the first time somebody comes in, laying out the whole process. You know, maybe it's going to be a little cumbersome for them to hear that. But if you say, look, there are many steps, we'll help you through it. Here's a packet of information, you know, you should just, because it's not always easy, you know, because people think, and sometimes people don't ask the right questions, you know. So it's not always the staff's fault. It probably is seldomly not, or frequently not the staff's fault.
Thank you. All right, that will conclude the media portion of the questioning. We will now go to a few quick audience questions as time allows, then we'll move right into the closing statements. The first question is, Mayor McCarley has made unprecedented steps to work with the school board to ensure our city has a new Credo Center. Make sure the city has a new Credo Center, fund new educational initiatives, and ensure the passage of budgets that prevent further layoffs of teachers. If elected, would you continue to follow that lead or chart a new course? And we'll start with Matt Scruton.
The center is certainly one that I support. I've written letters to the editor of the Fosters, along with other state representatives supporting the center and the need for funding that with state dollars leveraging against the city tax dollars. And I would certainly support that. It's needed in the community in this day and age. A lot of the jobs are becoming more specific in terms of the educational requirements. And the center plays a big part of that. And I applaud the mayor for her work in that area. It wasn't without the support of the city council. The city council did a good job after the funding, after the non-binding resolution and the removal of the state funds from the budget. They worked hard to correct that error and get the funds back in place. So they certainly should be applauded and recognized for their work in that area.
Thank you. Doug LaChance.
Yes, I would follow that same path. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Barnes.
I would absolutely follow that path. Coming from an industrial background, I've found, especially recently, that we can't hire enough workers to do what we need to do. And the kids that are out there, the youngsters just graduating high school, don't seem to be that interested in an industrial career, or they don't have the tools and skills necessary to even take an entry-level industrial job. I can't tell you how many youngsters come to apply for us that can't read a tape measure. You know, something as basic as that in a high-tech industrial job. The more students that the Credo Center can work with, the more that we'll be able to fill these high-tech jobs that I'd like to see brought into the city.
Thank you. Caroline McCarley.
Well,
are you staying the course, or are you charting a new course?
I certainly do plan to stay the course, but I would add to that, all of which I would agree with each other in terms of and everybody in this community probably knows my commitment to public education. But I do think in terms of the Technology Center, I would also like to see us as a community work more with evening courses with our companies and businesses across this city, because it ought not be a building that's only open for students during the day. And I think it's something we've talked about it in the past, certainly talked with school folks, and I think there's a lot of potential there that we need to make sure we take advantage of.
Excellent, thank you. All right, the next question is, what are your ideas to protect green space and how to have the city more, hang on. Ideas to protect green space and have the city move to be carbon neutral. I'll start with you, Caroline.
Well, you know, certainly, it's a good question, and it's certainly a fair question in this day and age. I think that we've been doing some of that. Certainly, we put in some energy savings situations at the new East Rochester school that we built. We're looking at it in terms of the renovations to the technology center, and we've certainly looked at the wastewater treatment plant for opportunities there. So that I think it's something that needs to stay on our agenda because it is incredibly important.
Thank you. Don Barnes.
As far as being carbon neutral, Rochester seems to me to have one of the easiest to deal with recycling programs I've ever experienced. I put it out on the street, and then the next day it's gone. I love it. As far as green spaces, we've got some great green spaces in the city, and unfortunately, some of them have been sort of fallen into disrepair, such as the ordeal at Hanson Pines that happened this week. And I'd like to see somehow for us to make those green spaces more accessible, more user-friendly, and in particular, safer for the people that want to use them.
So, thank you. Doug LaChance.
I got a lot of wacky ideas on this one. Yeah, seriously, I don't know how many of them are viable, but you could build those greenhouse domes over the wastewater treatment plants, lagoons, and you could grow algae, which would feed off the nutrients in the wastewater, and then you could harvest the algae and make biofuel. You know, squeeze it and make oil and convert that through a chemical process into biofuel. And then you could heat your buildings with it. We could put solar panels on all our city buildings. Every flat building in this city could have solar panels on it, even the non-flat ones. I mean, solar technology has come so far in the last 10, 15 years that you're seeing them on houses all over the city now, new buildings. And we can do that with our existing structures as well. And I think 2 wacky ideas is enough for one forum.
Well, thank you. Matt Scruton.
I think the cost of the technology is too high to become carbon neutral. However, I think there are a number of ways we can continue to reduce our energy use. As far as green space, I applaud the Conservation Commission for their work in this area. They have been able to leverage federal money against the taxpayers' money to preserve and conserve spaces, and I think that should continue. We have a great Conservation Commission. We should listen to their ideas and take advantage of those federal dollars.
Thank you. In our final question, I'm actually going to paraphrase this and make it a little more succinct. It's a specific question to Doug LaChance. And I think what this questioner is looking for is some assurance that you would, if elected, you would fulfill the full term.
As long as I draw breath, I will.
Okay. Thank you.
I did just last year, was successfully treated for stage 4 melanoma. There's no guarantee. They give me a 65% recovery prognosis. So I go down every 3 months to Dana-Farber and get scanned. You know, if I am elected, I intend to serve unless I drop dead.
Very good. Thank you. All right, we will now move to the closing statements. And again, based on the drawing of cards, the closing remarks will be in this order: Doug LaChance, Don Barnes, Caroline McCarley, and Matt Scruton. So we will start with you, Doug LaChance.
Thank you. No matter who you vote for, I know there's not a lot of contested races this year, so just please, everybody, go out and vote. And if you want to vote for a strong advocate for our downtown, someone who's going to think way outside the box and try pretty much anything and everything to try to get things moving, then please cast your vote for me, Doug LaChance, for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don Barnes.
With 4 candidates this year, you've got 4 great choices for this office. I live and work in Rochester. I've raised my children here. I've been a watcher of the city for the last 31 years, and I've seen some things that I think I can help improve in the city. One thing I'd like to do is make sure that our property value assessments are fair and equitable, and maybe not based on the assessor's opinion of the property owner, but more so on the property. I'd like to try to work with the Fairgrounds Commission. I noticed they just hired some new people that are going to try to put some more events in there. I think that events in Rochester that will bring people into the city, that'll spend money in our shops and in our restaurants, is a great thing. I'd also like to try to work with Roger Allen. I think that's a way underutilized facility, and I know the city has little involvement there, but I think if the city collaborated with them, we could bring some serious baseball tournaments back to Rochester. And again, bring people into the city to stay in our hotel rooms, eat in our restaurants, and shop in our shops. And I would like to renew my commitment that if elected, I'm going to donate the entire salary to a scholarship fund to provide scholarships for graduating Spalding High School seniors. Those scholarships were critical to my kids to help them with the college expenses, and I'd like to share and pass that on. And I would actually encourage the other candidates to make a similar commitment to support our seniors graduating at Spalding, help them with their college expenses. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Caroline McCarley.
Thank you. I truly believe that Rochester is on the verge of shattering our old image. I really do. And the thing I can say about that, though, is we got a long list of things we got to keep doing, and we've touched on them tonight, so I can do it quickly and save a little time. Certainly continuing the commercial and industrial growth. Clearly, the opioid crisis. The empty buildings and absentee landlords, housing shortage, workforce, affordable, all kinds of housing shortage issues. We need a new public works facility. We need to secure the rest of the state money for the Credo Center. The homeless issue continues to press upon us for coming up with other ideas. And we need to work with the Fair Association to see about getting the Rochester Fair back. But when I look at that list, and I say I think we're going to kind of break through, I look at what we do as a community, and almost every day, it feels like to me, there is an article in the paper about a group in Rochester or an organization in Rochester or a couple of individuals in Rochester that are just out there doing their thing to make things better. Down to the person who wanted to paint up some of the buildings downtown, just out of the blue, that came to us last summer. The list goes on for how much we care about one another and what we try to put into this community. And about a month ago, we got together, Rochester Listens, and we invited all of these folks that we've heard doing all this work to a meeting. And we ended up with, I think, almost 40 people there, a whole room full of folks who didn't even necessarily know each other, didn't know each other at all. And people introduced themselves and they talked about what more they could be doing. And at one point, there was a conversation about the fact that the Community Vibrancy Committee, who brought our piano downtown, that many of your business merchants downtown said was a delightful experience during the summer, are in line to get a couple of more pianos. And the folks from the social club raised their hands and said, hey, we got plenty of strong guys in trucks. When do you need us to get the pianos? And again, these are a group of people that had never spoken to one another, but it just was quite inspiring to know we have that many people that care so much about what's going on in the city. What we finally came up with in terms of one simple idea would be to have a community calendar, very accessible, on social media everywhere, that lines up events color-coded on all of it. And you know what? We now have one. Please visit rochesternhnews.com. It is an awesome site to learn all about the city. I have loved being your mayor, and I would love the chance to have 2 more years to finish some things. I ask for your vote on November the 7th.
Thank you very much. And finally, Matt Scruton.
Thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity to come out. You've heard a lot of great ideas from a number of candidates, and this forum has been very helpful, I think, in sharing our ideas. Rochester is a great place to be. We have a wonderful community. I've appreciated all the work of the volunteers in various areas, whether it's the volunteers volunteering to help those who are suffering from the opioid epidemic, or volunteers cleaning up Water Street, volunteers cleaning up Main Street and helping with the renovations of some of the downtown businesses. We have churches in the community. We have a lot of volunteers, and I think that's part of what makes Rochester great and a nice place to live and work and be. I'd like to see that more being done to support the small businesses and to improve our downtown. I have some ideas on ways we can attract jobs and keep the tax rate low, and I'd appreciate your support on November 7th when you go to the polls. Together we can do more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, that will conclude our candidates forum this evening. I'd like to thank our candidates for attending and answering the questions tonight. And I also want to thank our members of the media panel, Dave Andreessen, Kyle Stucker, and Harrison Thorpe, for their great questions this evening. We'd like to thank the City of Rochester for their facilities and assistance. We want to especially thank Tim Kremen of Kremen Creative for taping the forum this evening behind the board over there, and for Metrocast for rebroadcasting this several times prior to Election Day. We also want to thank the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce Young Professionals Group for attending this evening's forum. And of course, the Chamber staff, Laura Ring and her entire team, for helping out. And we definitely want to thank all of those who attended this evening in the audience and who asked questions. And most importantly, please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 7th. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.